And we are live. Welcome back to another episode of the Media Maestros pod. I'm one half of your team, Ram, with the one and only Ray, and we're so glad you joined us back for another episode. Ray, number 11. We made it. How are things going, bro?
It's good. It's good that we surpassed the double digits, and now we are on number 11, It's a lucky number to some, and I'm ready for so many more.
You know, it's funny. When I was in Little League football, I wore number 11.
Okay.
And it's also funny because this week's episode, I feel like we're taking a trip down memory lane, so to speak. Growing up as a kid, I absolutely loved one of our topics for today.
Okay.
Maybe I should just jump right into it. I think we're going to start things off with the one and only Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Have you seen it?
I have seen Across the Spider-Verse, yes, sir. It is a movie that I was looking forward to because of how much I enjoyed the one that came before it, Into the Spider-Verse. And yeah, what you've seen it?
Yeah, so I actually just saw it like less than 24 hours ago.
Fresh review.
It's fresh, and I have a lot to say, a lot of thoughts. I mean, I also saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and for me, that movie just blew me away. I mean, you talk about creativity, talk about the writing, some of the humor, the soundtrack. I was totally enamored, totally in love with that movie. And especially at a time when Marvel has been a bit less than top of the mark when it comes to their iterations of these stories. Into the Spider-Verse felt like such a fresh breath of cool, refreshing air at a time where things were getting a little stale. And I feel like Across the Spider-Verse really just upped the first attempt. I mean, personally, I loved everything about this movie. I thought that it was so unique in the ways that it kept me on my toes at every moment. I didn't know what to expect. And to be quite honest, spoiler alert for those that haven't seen the movie, the ending left me with a lot of feelings. I mean, what'd you think about it?
So one thing that you mentioned that I really agree with is upping it from the first one. This is a reference to my gamers out there, but it really felt like The Last of Us Part 2 compared to The Last of Us Part 1 in the sense that you have just more going on, a lot more characters and storylines and things that the characters are being involved with, and the fact that it's in a lot of ways it's just more of an emotional and personal story versus the origin story that we got. So, and when it comes to the ending, I knew that it was going to end in a way similar to that because I knew that it was a part 1. That was something that was put in the original trailers.
Really?
So as it was wrapping up, I was like, oh, it's probably going to end right here, and we're going to have to come back next year, which is exactly what's going on.
Now, personally, I don't watch trailers at all. I hate spoilers so much that I like to go into a movie not knowing anything that's going to happen. Now, you said this was mentioned in the trailers. How was it kind of conveyed in the trailers?
It's literally at the end of the trailer, it says Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. And then that's it. So I did know going in that there's going to be a cliffhanger of some sort. The story wasn't going to be resolved in this movie.
Okay. Now, I think that does help with some of the angst I was feeling as I tried to digest that ending. But compared to some other part 1s that we've seen, what immediately is drawn to mind for me is Avengers. What was that? Endgame? Or was that Infinity War with the snap?
Infinity War was part 1.
Now, even that ending felt more resolved than this ending. Can you recollect a time where a movie felt so cliffhangery? It felt as if it was a TV show, and you're watching the show, and the next episode's coming next week. So, you're able to sit with that cliffhanger and know that the next step is going to be resolved. I mean, am I reaching here? What do you think?
No, I do get what you're saying. I do think that at the time, Infinity War was like a huge, like people were distraught in the theater,
People were
and
crying,
they could not believe what they had just witnessed at the end.
real tears.
But the idea of, I guess, particularly the way it ended, it did seem like it would be coming back soon.
Yeah,
Like this isn't the way that it ended wouldn't be something that you would have to wait, another 4 years like you did from Into to Across.
exactly.
This is something they would have to wrap up within the next year, or it'd be like we would definitely feel gypped in a sense because it wasn't a whole movie. So because there is going to be a quick turnaround. It's coming, early spring of next year.
Okay.
It's not going to be that much of a wait. I feel like it's justified in the way that they kind of went about it.
I think that's a great point. And I would assume that most of that movie is already done. I mean, honestly, they could have fit 4 hours into this film, and I would have watched every minute attentively.
Right.
I totally loved it. I thought it was such a seamless transition from the first to the second, even though it had been, 4 to 5 years since we got that first iteration. But
Right.
everything was so much more developed. I'm thinking about how even Miles and how there's talk about his mustache and how he's grown up and he hasn't
Yeah.
seen Gwen for so long. And I thought everything was just so intentional, so well done, so creative, so thoughtful. Even a lot of the jokes. I think about that scene where, they're running throughout the HQ and there's, hundreds, maybe thousands of different Spider-Man. And there's there's a joke around every corner. I think about the Spider-Man that's having a therapy session with the other Spider-Man, and he
Yeah.
says, I'm thinking about my uncle, and he says, let me guess, he died.
Right.
I thought it was just really well done. I was a huge fan. I definitely recommend this. You recommended it to me. I recommend it to everyone to check it out as soon as possible.
Yeah. There. Speaking of those little jokes during that sequence, we got to see a Metro Boomin cameo where, as they were running, he's like, there's nowhere to run, and then he jumps out of the window. He's like, "Oh, my bad, guys, there was somewhere to run." Like, like it works. And the person who made the soundtrack for the film getting that cameo in the movie was really cool to see.
Yeah, that's a great piece and a great point that there were so many different actors and even actresses. Issa Rae had a role as one of the most prominent spider people in the
Right.
multiverse, and I thought it was just so inclusive, so creative, so thoughtful. There was even a dinosaur Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It was just great. I think it's the perfect film that oftentimes I think these films are geared towards children, but it was complex to a level where I think adults, it's really for the whole family. I think everyone would enjoy it.
I agree.
As you think about some of the recent superhero movies that we've had, especially with Marvel's current run of dominance, how would you rank this with kind of some other films that we've gotten in the last handful of years?
In the last handful of years, let's say post Avengers Endgame, I would say that this would rank very high, like probably top three. And it's not just because the recent slate has been lackluster. This is a genuinely great film. So it would be a top contender in any set of years, in my opinion.
I think I can't disagree with that at all. I could only further emphasize that I totally loved it. I think that thinking about the bar it had to live up to with the way that Into the Spider-Verse was so unique, especially for the first iteration, I think it exceeded that. I think about artwork. I feel like every scene was just a masterpiece. I think there was so much attention to detail paid throughout that. This was an excellent film.
I agree. And speaking of exceeding previous iterations, there's a particular show that just ended last year that, has gotten a lot of acclaim over the years. And it is the prequel to one of the best dramas of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And that being Better Call Saul, the prequel to Breaking Bad. And I was pretty on track with the show while it was going on, but I wasn't watching it live, so I had to wait for it to come on Netflix before I could, finish the newest season. So I finally finished that, and wow, this season really blew me away. A lot of people do have that conversation of, does Better Call Saul surpass Breaking Bad? I
Wow.
think they are different enough shows that it is kind of tough, and you have just these perfectly written and perfectly written characters and perfectly acted by the cast. It's You can just think of it as like just an entire entity of greatness. Like there
Mm.
is no real reason to compare because they do feed off of each other. You even get, the characters that were in, I mean, besides the protagonist Saul, but you get like these other like supporting and minor characters that also appear in Better
Hmm.
Call Saul, and it just fills out the story, fills out the universe in such a great way. And the fact that it's over is just such a bittersweet feeling because they stuck the landing. They didn't go, they didn't overstay their welcome in any by any means, and they crafted a great last season. But now it seems like that universe is gone. There's not going to be any more, spin-offs or prequels, sequels, or anything like that. This is it.
I mean, that's definitely a testament to creativity, to the show writers, the showrunners. Would you happen to know how much of Better Call Saul was written and created by the same creators of Breaking Bad?
Yeah. So I believe his name is Vince Gilliam,
Hmm.
who is the creator of Breaking Bad, is also the creator of this show, and him along with Peter Gold write every single episode. So they do
Wow.
sometimes have different directors that come in. Even a
Hmm.
couple of the cast members, are directors of certain episodes, but they will always have a hand in the storyline and where the seasons go as the episodes go. So that that Breaking Bad creative team is very apparent in this prequel series. So, have you watched any of Better Call Saul?
So I actually have. I was a huge fan of Breaking Bad, saw every episode, loved it,
Likewise.
rank it up there with one of my top five for sure TV shows of all time. And I actually had heard so much about Better Call Saul, but I think there's
Yeah.
always it's hard to live up to the sequel is always it faces a much greater burden than the original. But I did check out a few episodes of actually about the first season and I enjoyed it.
Okay.
I was watching it while I was studying for the bar, so I got a little
Mm.
bit of my legal entertainment along with the legal education. But then
Right.
got super busy, but I need to go
Yeah.
finish it, especially with this recommendation.
Yeah. It has a great run. I will say, like a lot of classic shows, there are going to be episodes that are slower than others as they are trying to build, the characters and the universe. So not
Okay.
every episode is going to be as exciting, and especially with Better Call Saul, which does take place in most of it at least, or I would say probably half of it, um, is more of a law show versus like a crime show.
Yeah.
So you are going to have entire episodes that are more devoid of action
Yeah.
compared to what you would see in Breaking Bad.
Which
But if
makes
you can,
sense.
if you appreciate the characters and you stick with it, it is still written beautifully, and I think that it would be worth making it all the way to the finish line.
Well, you've definitely convinced me, and I need to jump right back into it. It's funny, I mean, you talk about sticking the landing in the run. I was just thinking about the fact that Breaking Bad came out or was initiated in 2008.
Right.
So for Better Call Saul to last 2022, that 14-year run, I mean, especially as a sequel, I think of some other sequel shows, kind of spin-offs. Maybe you have what? How I Met Your Father.
Father.
You
Yeah.
have Young Sheldon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if those shows carry the same gravity as a Breaking Bad, but this has to
No,
be one of the greatest spinoffs of all time. So that's amazing.
I agree. Definitely one of the best spinoffs of all time.
Well,
And oh, go ahead.
just going to say that I'm grateful that we got that piece of art that'll last forever. And in thinking about the realm of great TV shows, Vince Gilligan has definitely cemented himself as one of the greatest creators of all time.
100%. He has made two of the best TV shows of this generation, and whatever he ends up doing next, apart from the Breaking Bad universe, I will definitely be tuning in to see how that goes.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of tuning in, I know you had a busy weekend not too long ago. You mentioned that you were gonna go check out, was that Genesis?
Yeah, Genesis, Genesis Owusu. Unfortunately, I didn't actually get to hear him perform. He was one of the
Oh,
openers,
oh man.
and I ended up missing it. Got there a little bit late,
Oh,
but I was able to see the headlining act of Paramore,
okay.
and this is they're touring their most recent album, and it's an album that I enjoyed. It fits into their brand in a sense, but they do kind of um, it takes itself apart from like the classic Paramore songs that we know, where it has that more strong edge. This kind of feels a little bit more like toned down and just more. I don't want to say emotional because those songs are also emotional, but just I guess more personal and
Okay.
more like something that you would like really need to sit down and focus on the lyrics and what they're saying versus the kind of high energy songs that they've performed in the past. So they played a lot of the songs from that album. This is why, but they also of course played the hits. The Misery Business, the Still Into You.
Yeah, I love those
All of those great joints along the way.
classics.
And after coming from this concert, it just made me think like, what are kind of the top five alternative bands that we have, like particularly probably from the last couple decades, because you do have like those classic bands. So I was thinking, I was like, Paramore has to be in the top five. Like,
Really?
the run that they've had, the fact that they're still prominent and relevant today, from, so many years ago, you would have to put them in a list like that.
Now, when you say kind of excluding the OGs, who are you thinking of excluding?
So, you have the legends like Nirvana
Okay.
and Foo Fighters and even, Radiohead,
Okay.
artists like that. Though they're already cemented,
Kind of
they don't
80s,
even
90s.
90s, yeah.
Okay.
But with a list like thinking of like the later, like I said, like the last couple decades, I would throw in Green Day,
Okay.
um, My Chemical Romance, Fall
Okay.
Out Boy,
Okay.
Linkin Park, and then of course Paramore. That would probably be, who I would consider in that top five slot.
Okay. Okay, I like that. I'm getting flashbacks of early 2000s.
Yeah.
Okay. Middle high school. Okay. That's a vibe. It's funny when you say alternative, my mind immediately goes to just a few. I definitely don't have the breadth of knowledge, but for me, I'm thinking of Coldplay.
Mm,
Huge
great.
Coldplay fan, Viva La Vida. I hear it playing right now in my head.
I used to, yeah.
Hey, also Imagine Dragons.
Okay.
I have a few classics that I can always turn back to.
Yeah, more recent one.
More recent, I'm trying to think if there's anyone else that I'm overlooking. I think
I
that's
mean,
who else would you mention? I mean, that's the
I was
bulk.
gonna say that's a pretty good list that we made.
Yeah, and I think that there's so much. variety even within the genre of alternative, then I think there's a
Right.
little bit for everyone. But
Exactly.
I like that. I like that.
You know, and this is a interesting kind of time where a lot of artists are, blending genres.
Yeah.
Like you have artists like Billie Eilish and Olivia Rodrigo, and we talked about the Lil Yachty,
Yeah.
Tyler the Creator, and it's really great to see these kind of mainstream artists that have like an alternative side to them and are bringing in those alternative genres into their music. So we can kind of pay homage to those bands that we mentioned as you know keeping that sound around because of the work that they put in.
That's a really great analysis. And you even think about when you talk about those OGs, I think of someone like the Beastie Boys, who kind of
Yeah.
pioneered a lot of the modern blends between hip hop, rap, alternative kind of rock. So it's great to see this evolution. And it's really interesting to think about some may call the death of genres for the future.
But you did mention hip hop, and I believe there is a particular project that is mostly hip hop, I would say, that you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, and especially when you think about an artist that has blended genres. A project I just wanted to shout out pretty quickly was Metro Boomin's Across the Spider-Verse soundtrack. And we
Mm,
spoke a few episodes back about how soundtracks have definitely become a little bit more of the draw when it comes to these bigger films. And just like the
right.
first Into the Spider-Verse, I mean, this soundtrack is another great one. A lot of hits, a lot of great artists, a lot of blending of genres, but also blending of, different artists collaborating together on a song that you wouldn't typically expect. A standout for me was Sway Lee, Lil Wayne, and I think Offset on
Okay.
Annihilate.
Annihilate. Okay.
Great song. Lil Wayne gave a great verse. He threw in a lot of spider kind of entendres. I thought it was
Punchline King.
Punchline King. I thought it was great. So check that out. Check out the movie first. You'll hear the songs throughout, and then check out the soundtrack. Definitely worth the listen.
Yeah, and that Coil Ray song on there, I haven't even like listened to it on my own, but on like TikTok, that's getting a lot of plays, and it's catchy. When I heard it in the movie, I could definitely recognize that was Coil Ray, and I was feeling that one. So I'm gonna
Yeah,
check out the whole project.
yeah, it's worth
Uh,
checking out. Metro's got another one.
Sounds like it. And speaking of, we were talking about kind of the legends that have influenced
Oh, geez.
the past couple of decades of music. For Blast from the Past, I just wanted to shout out one of the best rock artists and one of the best rock albums, Nevermind by Nirvana.
Classic.
Led by Kurt Cobain, drummer Dave Grohl, who ended up forming Foo Fighters, who is a great band in their own right. But yeah, this album is a classic. Came out in 1991. It houses so many great rock anthems and hits. Smells Like Teen Spirit,
Mm-hmm.
Lithium, even one that got kind of a resurgence as a result of the recent Batman movie, Something in the Way, which
Mm.
is kind of the theme of that film. Like, when I was revisiting it, I noticed that a lot of the songs kind of have a similar feel to each other, but it just so happened that there are these particular songs that really broke out and became iconic, and they still live on today. And it just shows how committed they were to putting their heart and soul into this project, that these songs end up being universal and living on. So you just have to recognize how great this the songs on this album are, and how much this band has played a part in the subsequent years of alternative music.
It speaks to the testament of an artistry and the quality of an album for 22 years later, songs to still resurge and still find their way, attracting the masses. So that's pretty great.
Exactly.
And
32.
32,
91. Yeah.
91. Quick maths, not always so quick. Great catch and another great recommendation for this week's Blast from the Past. And we thank you all for checking out another great episode of the Media Maestros pod. I'm one half of your team, Ram, with the one and only Ray. We couldn't do it without you. Peace.
See y'all.